A terrifying movie, book, or show makes your blood pump the moment you watch or read? Absolutely. We cover our eyes when we watch the movie The Scream along with the rest of the world. From fatal exorcisms to unexplained deaths to devil worship, these are some real-life nightmares. But most of the time you rest easy after knowing that what you witnessed is fiction, invented to scare you and hold your attention. When the real world gets scarier than anything Stephen King could imagine, that's when you have every right to be a little afraid of the dark. Every once in a while, a story of a terrible disappearance, demonic possession, or devil worship ends up in the local paper instead of on the pages of books and fiction. We've rounded up the 10 scariest real-life horror stories in this video. The Watchmen. After moving into the $1,300,000 dream home, a New Jersey family began receiving creepy death threats from someone who identified himself as the Watcher. Since moving in, the owners said they have received numerous letters from the mysterious person. The Watchman stated that the house has been the object of my family for decades, and I was tasked with observing and awaiting his second coming. The new owners have several children, and other letters asked, "Have they figured out what's on the walls? And I'm glad to know your names now. They're young blood you brought to me." The family was forced to flee their home and subsequently filed a lawsuit against the previous owners. The Haunted Doll. When you think of haunted dolls, it's likely that the creepy kind of Victorian porcelain comes to mind, none of which you probably have out there. Still, don't get too comfortable with children's toys too soon. A Disney Elsa doll that was gifted at Christmas 2013 in the Houston area made headlines in early 2012 when it apparently became haunted. The doll recited phrases from the movie Frozen and sang "Let It Go" when a button on her necklace was pressed. For 2 years he did it in English, said his mother Emily Madonia. In 2015, he started doing it by switching between Spanish and English. There wasn't a button that changed that. It was just random. The family has owned the doll for more than 6 years and has never changed its batteries. The mother says the doll would start talking and singing randomly even with the switch off. The family decided to throw away the creepy doll in December 2019. Weeks later, they found her inside a living room bench. The kids insisted they didn't put it there, and I believed them because they wouldn't have messed with the trash outside, the children's mother said. At that point, Elsa stopped singing the English version of "Let It Go," speaking only in Spanish when pressed. The family then twice bagged the bizarre doll and placed it at the bottom of the trash, which was taken out on the day of the trash. They traveled soon after, but when they returned, Elsa had also returned and was waiting in the backyard of her house. This time, the family sent Elsa to a family friend in Minnesota, who pinned the haunted doll to the front bumper of her pickup truck. It looks like it hasn't returned to Houston yet, according to Madonia's latest February Facebook update on the creepy doll. The House of the Axe Killer. Axe Murder House in Villisca, Iowa is a well-known tourist attraction for ghost hunters and horror lovers. The site of a gruesome unsolved murder in 1912, in which 6 children and 2 adults had their skulls completely crushed by the axe of an unknown perpetrator, was purchased in 1994. Restoring it to its 1912 condition and converted into a tourist destination. It costs $428 a night to stay in the old haunted house, where visitors often recount strange paranormal experiences, such as visions of a man with an axe wandering the halls or faint screams of children. But in November 2014, the haunting took a darker turn. Robert Stephen Larson Jr. was on a regular recreational paranormal visit with friends when the real horror happened. His companions found him stabbed in the chest, an apparently self-inflicted wound. They quickly called 911, and Larson was taken to a nearby hospital before being airlifted to Creighton University Medical Center in Omaha. The Montgomery County Sheriff's Office said Larson suffered the self-inflicted wound around 12:45 p.m., which is about the same time the 1912 murders began at the home. Larson recovered from his injuries, but never spoke publicly about what happened that day. For Martha Lynn, the owner of the house, the incident was very disturbing. It's advertising, but it's not exactly the kind of advertising you want to have. I don't want people to think that when they come to the Villisca Axe Murder House, something is going to happen that will make them do something like this. The house remains open for sightseeing and overnight stays today. A deadly exorcism. In August 2016, in North London, 26-year-old Kennedy Ife began acting strangely and aggressively after a sore throat. He allegedly bit his father, threatened to cut off his own genitals, and complained of a python or snake inside him before his family pinned him to a bed with bindings and excessive force. The family then began trying to heal Kennedy through restraint and prayer over the next 3 days. The court was told. His brother, Colin Ife, told police, "It's clear that that thing was in him, what we believe to be a demon because it wasn't natural. I was clearly trying to kill him," he said. "We had to keep him alone. It was clear that if we didn't restrain him, he could have tried to hurt people in our family." Kennedy Ife had been bedridden for 3 days without medical attention when his brother called emergency services, explaining that Kennedy Ife was complaining of dehydration. He appeared to have developed breathing problems and was pronounced dead at 10:17 a.m. While police were at the house, Colin Ife allegedly carried out a resurrection attempt by singing and praying for his brother. All 7 members of Kennedy Ife's family were charged with manslaughter, private imprisonment, and causing or permitting the death of a vulnerable adult. A post-mortem examination revealed more than 60 injuries, including a possible bite on Kennedy Ife's body, and his father Kenneth Ife, along with 4 of his brothers, also suffered injuries. Kenneth Ife told jurors he ordered his children to take turns and use overwhelming force, but denied that an association with cults, occultism, and secret societies played any role in the death. Following a 4-day jury deliberation, all 7 family members were cleared of the charges on March 14, 2019. The death of Elisa Lam. Elisa Lam was last seen on January 31, 2013 in the lobby of the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. She was vacationing on the West Coast, documenting the trip on her blog and talking to her parents every day. On Jan 31, those calls stopped. Lam was gone. Soon the police got involved and his parents arrived to help in the search. They had nothing. In February of that year, police released surveillance footage of Lam's elevator before her disappearance. The footage shows Lam behaving strangely in the elevator, appearing to talk to invisible people, peering through the corner of the door, crouching in the corner and opening and closing the door. But what exactly is happening in this video raises more questions than it answers. Theories range from psychotic episodes to demonic possession and unknown assailants out of camera view. At that time, hotel guests began to report strange things happening to the Cecil Hotel's water supply. "The shower was horrible," said Sabina Baugh, who spent 8 days there during the investigation. "When you turned on the faucet, the water turned black first for 2 seconds and then went back to normal. The tap water tasted horrible," Baugh said. "It tasted very funny, sweet and disgusting. It's a very strange taste. I can barely describe it. But for a week, they never complained. We never thought about any of that," she said. "We thought it was just the way it was here." On the morning of February 19, a hotel employee climbed onto the roof and used a ladder to investigate the hotel's water storage tanks. That's when authorities found Lam's body, naked and decomposing, whose personal items were found nearby. After an autopsy, his death was labeled as accidental. NBC Los Angeles reported at the time on the strange circumstances in the hotel's past. The tank has a metal latch that can be opened, but officials said access to the roof is protected by an alarm and a lock. The single-room hotel has an unusual history. Richard Ramirez, who was found guilty of 14 murders in the 1980s, lived on the 14th floor for several months in 1985, and international serial killer Jack Unterweger is suspected of murdering 3 prostitutes during his time living there in 1991. He committed suicide in prison in 1994. In 1962, a female occupant jumped out of one of the hotel's windows, killing herself and a pedestrian she fell into. An exorcism in Indianapolis. In 2021, The Indianapolis Star published a lengthy story about a family terrorized by 3 children allegedly possessed by demons. The account of Latoya Ammons and her family tells disturbing stories of children climbing the walls, being thrown into the rooms, and threatening doctors with deep, unnatural voices. It sounds like something out of a movie, a work of fantasy, except that all of these accounts were more or less corroborated with nearly 800 pages of official records obtained by the local newspaper and reported in more than a dozen interviews with police, hospital staff, psychologists, family members, and a Catholic priest. One of the most chilling sections of the report includes a segment about the possessed 9-year-old. According to the original Washington Hospital report, an account corroborated by Walker the nurse, the 9-year-old boy had a strange smile and walked on his back through a wall to the ceiling. He then rolled over and fell to his feet. Another segment of the articles reads, the 12-year-old would later tell mental health professionals that she sometimes felt like she was being suffocated and pressured so she couldn't speak or move. She said she heard a voice saying she would never see her family again and would not live another 20 minutes. Murder-suicide in Utah. In September 2014, a Utah teenager returned to his home to find his parents and 3 siblings dead. In one notebook, a to-do list was scrawled on the pages. The list felt as if parents were getting ready to go on vacation. Items like feed the pets and find someone to take care of the house were written. It looked like murder-suicide, but there was no suicide note, no prior indication that they would do it, no explanation. Police were unable to find out why 2 parents killed themselves and 3 of their 4 children. For a year, no one knew exactly what happened to the family, or what would lead the parents to do something so unthinkable. In January, police released more chilling details of the case. According to reports from family members and a police investigation, the parents were driven by the belief that the apocalypse was coming and by an obsession with a convicted killer. Friends and family told police the parents were worried about evil in the world and wanted to escape an impending apocalypse, but most assumed they just wanted to move somewhere off the grid. Investigators also found letters written by Christy Strack to one of the state's most infamous convicted killers, Dan Lafferty, who was convicted of the fatal 1984 stabbing of his sister-in-law and her 1-year-old daughter. According to trial testimony, he killed the victims at the behest of his brother, Ron Lafferty, who claimed to have had a revelation from God. The story became a book and series. Police said Christy Strack became friends with Dan Lafferty, and she and her husband even visited him in prison. The phone tracker. In 2007, newspapers reported a series of phone calls to families with terribly specific death threats. The unidentified people knew exactly what the families were doing and what they were wearing. Families said calls came at any time of night, threatening to kill their children, their pets and grandparents. Voicemails poured in, playing recordings of their private conversations, including one with a local police detective. The caller knows, the family said, what they're wearing and what they're doing, and after months of investigation, the police seemed powerless to stop them. This continued with the Kuykendall family for months, who reported a call with a harsh voice threatening to slit their throats. When Fircrest Wash police tried to find the culprit, the calls were traced back to the Kuykendalls' own phones, even when they were turned off. It got worse. The Kuykendalls and 2 other Fircrest families said they believed the callers were using their cell phones to spy on them. They said the hackers know their every move, where they are, what they're doing, and what they're wearing. The callers recorded private conversations, families and police said, including a meeting with a local detective. If you liked this video, do not forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Also activate the bell to receive notification of all the videos that we post here daily.